What is up, Steelers Nation? Happy New Year. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they defeat the Seattle Seahawks in Week 17 and make this as interesting as they possibly can. Behind Mason Rudolph and one incredible running game, the Pittsburgh Steelers move into Week 18, where they have the potential to clinch a last-minute playoff berth and send this season into an even crazier roller coaster ride than it already is. On top of that, Mike Tomlin claims his 17th non-losing season in a row, which maybe is a little bit more historic than we want to make it seem sometimes. And the Steelers, they might have a quarterback situation heading into this week, but we do not expect it to last very long. It's a snowy one here in the Berg. Woke up to January 1st with a little snow on the ground. Kind of felt right out there. I'm glad that it held off for Christmas and gave us a little New Year's Day snow. How are we feeling, my friend?
You know, I feel in an odd way kind of vindicated, because I think when we talked during the preseason, we were talking about what the Steelers offense looks like at its peak, and
yes,
it was that. It was what we saw in Seattle. It was Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren running over people, some deep throws to George Pickens. It only took, 17 weeks?
Yeah, 16 games, 17 weeks.
Yeah, but we finally got there, so I feel great.
I'm glad. It really is. That is exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers were looking for. Who would have thought that it would have taken 3 quarterbacks and Mason Rudolph would have been the guy that gets them to where they need to be? But this is where they are. They head into Week 18 against the Baltimore Ravens. They'll travel to M&T Bank Stadium with an opportunity to win. They need a little bit of help. We'll dive into that to earn a playoff spot, but they haven't decided on a quarterback yet. Let's start with the game as a whole. You look at the stat book, and I mean, I sent it out right at halftime, and I just thought it was as perfect of a stat line as it could possibly come for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Seemingly only got better. Mason Rudolph finishes 18 of 24 with 274 yards. Najee Harris, 27 rushes, 122 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Probably should have been 3, but he was gracious enough to slide there at the end and just seal the deal for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jaylen Warren, 13 rushes, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Pat Freiermuth, 3 receptions, 44 yards. Jaylen Warren, 4 receptions, 23 yards. Deontay Johnson, 4 receptions, 76 yards. And George Pickens, 7 receptions, 131 yards. Could not come up with a better stat line for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're watching that game yesterday. What are the thoughts going through your head as this offense is finally starting to click?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a little inexplicable in some ways, because yeah, Mason Rudolph has played really well, but the supporting cast around him has also been miles better than it was at any point during the season. And I understand you're playing a Seahawks team and a last week of Bengals team that, undermanned and not really the greatest defenses to begin with in terms of their league rankings. But there's just something different to this team right now. They're playing with an edge that they desperately needed. Mason Rudolph gave them a shot in the arm. It's not all about him, but he also gave them a vertical passing threat that they hadn't had before.
Yes,
just something feels different, and I wish it was easier to say, oh yeah, it's because Mason Rudolph is doing this specific thing really well, but they're getting better contributions from the offensive line, they're getting better contributions from up and down the receiving core, and the running backs are playing as well as they have all season. So it's we're going to focus on Mason, and he's the big story, and he's kind of the one different variable in there compared to what they've had all season. But it's just a kind of a complete team effort too, and it's guys just playing better than they have all season at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But at the same time, you want to not make it about Mason because there's so much there. But even Najee said it, Cam Hayward said it. There's just something different. Having a passing game has opened up so much for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It has allowed Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren to be the identity without having to, just constantly focus on, everybody's in the box because nobody's scared of Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky or whoever's out there. Now you have to spread out a defense. Teams have to worry about both the passing and the running game, which allows your identity to actually become effective. What it's done is completely changed who the Pittsburgh Steelers are, top to bottom. It is just they've become a team. They've become an offense that works in the NFL. And honestly, I was sitting there last night and I was thinking, and I know I'm wrong here. I know that my brain quickly switched, but I was like, I wonder what Matt Canada's thoughts are about maybe we should have just put Mason Rudolph in and I'd still have a job. I'm not saying that would have been the case because Ben Roethlisberger was here for a while, but I don't know. There's something about how an offense works once you actually have a quarterback that is Mason Rudolph. Nobody thought it was going to be Mason Rudolph. The Steelers are undecided going into Week 18 about Mason Rudolph or who their starting quarterback could possibly be. Is there even a question here? Like, if you're Mike Tomlin, and I know he's going to talk at noon, and chances are this podcast has like an hour-long lifespan before it's just, oh, well, Mason Rudolph's the starting quarterback. That's all we need to worry about moving forward. Do you think there's any, do you think Mike Tomlin was just giving us one, as he does when he says, yeah, I don't know, I'll let this stew for the next 24 hours or so, and then we'll announce a starting quarterback? Like, there can't be any, and even 100% healthy Kenny Pickett, there's no chance you're taking Mason Rudolph off the field, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's a question at all. I mean, look, I don't want to put too much stock into 2 games, but these 2 games have quite honestly been better than anything that Kenny Pickett has done in his entire career. Like,
yes,
that's just a fact. Like, it's, and that doesn't necessarily have to be an indictment on Kenny's future, but I also don't think we have to work so hard to protect Kenny's feelings or anything else like that. Like, Mason Rudolph has just been plainly better in these 2 games than Kenny Pickett's been at any point in his short career.
Yes.
Mason Rudolph is, I think he's the first Steelers quarterback since Ben, I think maybe 7 years ago I saw, to have a passer rating above 112 in consecutive games. Kenny Pickett's never posted a passer rating above 108 wow. in his career. Like, he's never even reached that high. He's thrown for 270 yards or more just twice in his career, and he's 1-1 in those games. He's only thrown, I think, 1 interception. He's never thrown a touchdown in those games either. Mason just gives them a completely different element. He's played so much better. He, even ignoring those comparisons to Kenny Pickett, Mason's played well enough to earn this last start at the very least. And I think it's undeniable that even if Kenny Pickett is healthy, Mason Rudolph gives you the best shot to not only win in Baltimore, but I think, like, moving forward, like, if you have to go to Miami, if you have to go to Buffalo, if you're able to sneak into that playoff picture, Mason Rudolph absolutely deserves the right to not only get you to the dance, give you a chance to get into the playoffs, but if you do get there, try to lead you on a run, because again, this is still a wide open AFC, and I mean, you get into the dance, and I think anything can happen.
Yeah, there's no way. Like, in my head, Mason Rudolph is your starting quarterback until you lose your next game, whenever that may be, because that's the end of your season. It is no longer Kenny Pickett's job. I think the best case, and I think it's actually time for the Pittsburgh Steelers to stop holding the injury card over Kenny Pickett. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's got to be this week. It has to be Mason Rudolph is our starter, Kenny Pickett is our backup, because that is the best quarterback situation that we could have on the field, even if Kenny's not out there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it should no longer be, well, if we go to Baltimore and Mason Rudolph gets hurt, Mitch Trubisky is our savior to try and get us into the playoffs. No, you can't. You have to be as cautious as humanly possible in this game. It has to be Mason Rudolph. Kenny Pickett is your backup. Take the injury card away. Let him practice fully throughout the week, and don't make it a big deal anymore. Stop hiding behind the injury of Kenny Pickett and just be real with the situation that Mason Rudolph is your starting quarterback, because Mason Rudolph has earned the starting job in this last game and moving forward. Once you get into the postseason and however far you can go, Mason Rudolph is your guy, because that's all that matters. And we've said that for 2-3 weeks now. Is the only thing that matters right now is making the playoffs and winning in the playoffs and trying to win a Super Bowl. Mason Rudolph gives you that best opportunity. Do we start having that conversation? Because I said this last week, and I doubled down on it on my walkover before the game, and I don't know if I'm ready to triple down on it right now, but do we start having the conversation of, is this Mason Rudolph's job moving forward? Do you even consider, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, trying to bring him back as a starter? I don't think there's any chance he'd come back as backup. I don't think if you told him, hey, Mason, you're going to come compete with Kenny Pickett to be the guy, he's looking at that as a fair opportunity. I think he would leave and go somewhere, like I said, Minnesota, Vegas, Denver, somebody who needs a quarterback who they're going to say, hey, you are our starter. Do you think that we start having that conversation? Do you think the Pittsburgh Steelers start thinking that way of maybe Mason is the secret weapon that we have had sitting around for a while now, and now we don't have to worry about going and getting another quarterback in the offseason?
Well, I think about it this way. I mean, Mason has had opportunities before to get out of Pittsburgh, like it hasn't always, he didn't have to stick around here for as long as he did. And I think there's maybe an emotional connection to Pittsburgh in a way that I don't quite understand because they've never really given him an opportunity before now. But, who knows? Maybe he feels like he's broken through in a way that makes it more likely for him to win that competition if it does come up. I think the Steelers absolutely consider it. And, you got to consider what the numbers look like and everything. But I mean, you're going to get Mitch Trubisky off the books. What
do the numbers look like? What is, if you are a GM, and even if, no, let's go Mason Rudolph's side. If you're Mason Rudolph's agent, what are you looking for on a contract next year?
Well, I mean, I think you're looking for at least what the Steelers gave Mitch Trubisky, right? Like,
yeah, I think it was like 10 mil.
Right. You're looking for, what would that be? That would be 8 figures, right? Like I think 10 million is like 10 million a year is like the floor, is the line, because I don't know, that's starting quarterback money. And I think that's what Mason should imagine himself as. Those are the opportunities that he should be pursuing. He's played well enough to kind of earn that right to look for those jobs. So I think, that $10 million line is where it starts and ends. And it's probably more than that, like there's going to be competition. There are going to be teams that want Mason Rudolph in the fold, and the Steelers maybe have a leg up in terms of just like, longevity and a connection with him from a while, from just time. But unless you're actually giving him a real opportunity, I feel like Mason's going to be able to see right through that, and he'll consider other opportunities if you're not going to give him the time of day.
Yeah. Could you imagine Mason Rudolph going from $1 million third string quarterback in 3 weeks? It'll be 3 games, maybe 4 if they make the postseason, to a $10-12 million a year quarterback for whoever, And that's the thing, is just like you said, like, a team like Denver, think about a team like Denver who's about to eat $86 million in cap space next year to get rid of Russell Wilson. $10 million, $12 million, $15 million, that's nothing for them. They're looking at that going, that is the best case scenario we could possibly have when it comes to quarterback, because for one, we're not going to draft a quarterback that's going to go win us a Super Bowl. We need a guy right now because this team is good enough to actually win. Mason's a veteran. He's looked good. Why not go hand him $15 million? Like, and honestly, like, people are going to start comparing it. Somebody tossed it out to me last night. They were like, oh, this is the Jimmy Garoppolo effect or the Jacoby Brissett effect. I mean, maybe it is. Who cares? I'm always team player. And if Mason Rudolph is making a bag off of 3 games, I'm all for it, dude. Go get your money. You don't play in the NFL forever. You almost didn't play in the NFL this year. Go make the most of this opportunity and get paid as much as you want. I don't know. You think the Steelers are giving up, $15 million to, they'd have to, right? Like, they were willing to do it with Mitch Trubisky. I don't understand why they wouldn't be willing to do it with Mason Rudolph.
Right. I don't understand either. I feel like that's a perfectly reasonable number for them to consider. Yeah, like you said, like why you would give that money to, and this is the thing about Mason. Like, I think we said it before his first start, when we were kind of introducing this idea of considering him as a starter, him leapfrogging Mitch Trubisky, is that even his numbers from earlier in his career aren't awful. Like, no, unspectacular, but not awful at all. Like, this guy has a track record. It's been very rare that he has played poorly in the NFL, quite honestly. So I think I look back on my impressions of Mason, and I think I maybe had the wrong idea. We watched him in training camp and obviously didn't look particularly impressive. He was the third best quarterback.
Check down Mason.
Right. And he looks like a completely different guy when you actually put him into games. And I think maybe part of that is just kind of the nothing to lose mentality that he has right now, and feels like he's kind of, was on the verge of the end of his career. But, either way, he's when he actually plays in NFL games, he's good. He wins games. He takes care of the ball. He's not like, and now he's kind of added this aggression component to it that makes him even more dangerous. So, I mean, I think I personally did some revisionist history about just how good Mason Rudolph is and what kind of quarterback he is. So, I think I don't think it's just a 3-game sample size, or a 2-game sample size, whatever we're working with. Like, there's a lot more to grab onto with Mason than I think I kind of originally knew or considered or had, given credit for.
Yeah, and you got to look. I mean, Mason's 7-4-1 as a starting quarterback. The tie to the Lions was atrocious,
Yes.
But he had 24 hours to prepare to start that game, so it's still bad. It was a winless Lions team. You can't just remove that, but at the same time, you have to. There's an asterisk there. You go into some of those losses. I mean, I believe that he got hurt against the Ravens, and that was the game that Earl Thomas knocked him out, and they lost that game because of a Juju Smith-Schuster fumble right at the end. What was the other one? The other one was the Jets game where he broke his collarbone. I believe they lost that one as well. So that's 2 games. The guy's technically 7-2, 7-2
when he finishes a game. Yeah,
when he finishes a game, that's a good quarterback right there. Like, that's a guy that you look at the record, you're going, all right, that's not bad. We'll take that over a lot of guys in this league who have losing records. I mean, a lot of guys that make $1 billion have losing records in the NFL. Mason Rudolph's out here, very small sample size, but he wins games. I agree with that. I don't think there's any. If I'm not Mike Tomlin, because I think Mike Tomlin makes everything. He tries to say, "Oh, we keep it as simplistic as possible." I think he makes everything 10 times more complicated than it actually needs to be. But if I'm Omar Khan and if I'm Art Rooney, I'm sitting around going, "All right, well, when the 3 of us meet up, I'm going to make my pitch for Mason Rudolph," because I think that is a very solid option that you don't have to pay a boatload of money for. If people are gonna toss out names like Jacoby Brissett or Baker Mayfield or Russell Wilson, they might as well toss out Mason Rudolph, because that is a much more affordable option than those guys. And if you're gonna go with Jacoby Brissett or any of those, that category of guys, you might as well go with Mason anyways, because Jacoby's not coming in here expecting to start, and I don't think the Steelers are expecting to start him. Mason at least is like real competition. Like, this is somebody that you're going to bring in here and say, like, this could be our starting quarterback. We kind of hope this is our starting quarterback. I don't know. I think at some point you got to remove the first round thing, and everybody's going to make that a big deal moving forward. But if Mason goes out there and takes this team to the playoffs, I mean, you can't, like, where Kenny was drafted means absolutely nothing and has to continue to mean absolutely nothing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Guys, we have gear. New merchandise from AST to Muth, Bleed Black and Gold, Kenny to George, and plenty of others now at our new website, blackandgoldapparel.com. And the coolest part, 50% of all profits at our store go to UPMC Children's Hospital here in Pittsburgh to make sure that we are giving back. We can't thank you guys enough, and we want to show you guys how thankful and how grateful we are for everything by making sure that we do our part to make the community here in Pittsburgh better. Go check out everything. We tried to make everything new and improved, from our designs to our quality of sweatshirts and t-shirts and everything else. Let us know and check everything out at blackandgoldapparel.com. And as always, thank you guys for everything. That being said, they go to Baltimore, Week 18, M&T Bank Stadium. The Baltimore is going to be hush-hush about whether Lamar and everybody's going to play this week. If Lamar Jackson takes the field in Week 18 after locking up the MVP, it's not like there's nothing to fight for. You're going to win the MVP. You already won the AFC. There's just no need to put somebody out there unless you're thinking, okay, gotta keep the rust off. Lamar Jackson's injury history, there's no chance that this guy is taking the field if I'm the Baltimore Ravens in Week 17. You got to expect a handful of backups for the Ravens this week. Steelers need some help. The way this breaks down is they have to beat the Ravens. They're 3.5-point favorites to start it off with. From there, they could get it on Saturday night if the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts tie. We'll see what happens there. If not, the Kansas City Chiefs eliminated the Cincinnati Bengals. Therefore, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills who give them some hope. The Jaguars play the Titans, who have lost pretty much everybody. So, that's a worrisome opponent. But Trevor Lawrence still dealing with some injuries. Buffalo's traveling or has to lose to Miami, who will fight for the number 2 seed in this one. Potentially the AFC East. It is the AFC East as well. If they lose, the Steelers are the 6th seed. So a lot could go on here. A little confusing, but just to make it simplistic, Steelers got to win. You need either a Colts or Houston tie or Jacksonville or Buffalo to lose. You're looking at this a week out, no idea what's going to happen. You thinking the Pittsburgh Steelers find their way into the postseason. How realistic is this? How high should someone's hopes be if they're sitting around, New Year's Day having a conversation with Uncle Bill, talking about, oh, the Steelers could get this done? You saying yes, or you saying, nah, I don't know about that one?
I'm feeling pretty confident, quite honestly. Well, not only because, of what you let off with, the idea that the Ravens are going to rest a bunch of guys. I mean, I saw Jim, is it Jim or John? Who coaches it's John. It's John. Jim coaches Michigan. Okay. I knew that.
Yeah.
But I saw John Harbaugh saying, we're going to have a conversation with Lamar about whether or not he's playing next Sunday. I think that conversation is going to be pretty short, and it's going to be,
what is
you're
the
not playing. Right.
Yeah.
You want to play Lamar? That's cool. I don't really care. You can play in 2 weeks when we're actually in the playoffs. So I don't think the Ravens are going to put, many, if any, of their starters out next week. So I feel pretty confident that the Steelers will be able to go into Baltimore and get a win. But also, the Steelers don't necessarily need to win. They'll need a bunch of help, but for as much as this is kind of a crapshoot, I think that gives them a great chance of landing in the playoffs, somehow, some way. Buffalo has everything to play for going into Miami, and I feel like they play their best football against the really good teams in this league, and Miami's one of those teams. So and it seems like that Buffalo Miami game is really what kind of hinges things,
Yes.
Buffalo losing down there or Buffalo winning, Buffalo losing down there is certainly possible. And going on the road, that's definitely tough. And I feel like that's the one. It's unfortunate you got to wait all the way for Sunday night after playing on Saturday afternoon, but I don't know. I think there's enough ways for this all to just the scenarios where they don't make it in seem, fewer and further between than the ones where they do actually make it in. I think the Steelers have done such a good job of rallying down the stretch, and I think they've set themselves up in the best opportunity possible. And that whole, just if you win in Baltimore, you give yourself such a great shot. There are only, I think, one or two, I think maybe 3 scenarios, period. 3 of, I think, maybe 15 or 16, maybe up to 20 scenarios where if the Steelers win, they don't make the playoffs. It's, you take care of business in Baltimore, which again, I feel like is extremely likely. And your odds just skyrocket because there's only a few scenarios where everything else shakes out the way that you get left out. So it really starts and ends with winning in Baltimore. And then I think since that's super likely, I feel like everything else hinges on just getting a win there.
That's all. I agree. I think that's all. Mike Tomlin was asked yesterday. Do you even pay attention to anybody else? No, you can't. You win in Baltimore, you give yourself the best opportunity to make the postseason. I remember sitting around. I was a kid. I don't even remember how old I was, but you could still ask me to this day. I went out. I owned 5 jerseys as a kid growing up. They were all super random. It was a James Harrison, a Roy Williams wide receiver for the Lions, a Julius Peppers, and then a Ryan Fitzpatrick. Oh, I want to say it was a Bills jersey because it was Ryan Fitzpatrick played for the Bills and Mark Sanchez played for the Jets at the time. The Steelers needed the Jets to lose. I remember sitting on my mom's couch growing up, watching this game, thinking all day, my dad's chatting in my ear because he loves, everybody knows my dad's a Broncos fan. He loves to talk shit. And he's like, there's no way, man. There's not. Have you watched the Jets play this season? There's no chance that they're getting in the playoffs. And maybe this was the other way around. Maybe it was the Jets needing to lose. I don't know. Ryan Fitzpatrick played for a lot of teams. And I remember watching that game the whole time. And the second that again, I want to say it was the Bills, won this game, I looked at my dad and I went, "What's up?" And he went, "Man, that's just something the Steelers get away with." And that's what I think that's the first thing I thought of in this situation is just, this is a situation where the Steelers have been in time and time and time again. And somehow the NFL gods are just like, we need the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. Like, they just make the playoffs better. I don't know why. It's not like they win recently, but they make they make the playoffs better. They make football better. And sometimes they just get a little edge. That's how I look at this. You take care of business in Baltimore, the universe just tends to work in your favor. I also think that it's working in Mason Rudolph's favor because I'm a big somewhere, somehow, this guy got some real good karma for being as professional as he has been throughout the years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, that this is his time to shine. And whoever's out there controlling all the sticks, writing the script, they're looking out for Mason Rudolph. I could see it happening. I don't know. Everybody's going to like freak out. It's going to be a really tough week. I think it just comes down to you take care of business in Baltimore. You feel really good. Last week we were talking about the Hader parlay. I mean, the Hader parlay like almost worked out. It came very close to working out. And the Steelers are more alive than they were heading into the week somehow. So somehow it just always works itself out. And I know it's tough to sit here a week away and say, oh, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Who knows? What I do know is the Steelers have set themselves up in a very, very good situation.
Right. And throughout the season, I've been you kind of look at Baltimore and you think, okay, yeah, they're among those contenders, but like, I think very rarely throughout the season anyone really looked before, they really took it to the 49ers a couple weeks ago. No, I feel like very few people looked at them as like legitimate Super Bowl contender, one of the best teams in the league, like had one of the best records, but I don't think anyone believed in them.
Yes.
The reason I thought that they were always going to kind of be one of the better teams in the league was because they very rarely like tripped over themselves,
Mm-hmm.
They very rarely had an embarrassing loss that just like completely took the air out of their out of their season. And I think the Steelers have kind of done a little bit of that over these past 3 weeks. While everyone else is kind of dealing with injuries and stumbling a little bit, losing to teams that they shouldn't, the Steelers have taken care of business. And I feel like that's all you need to do this year. Like, there are enough teams that, are dealing with injuries, like I said, dealing with setbacks, and, the odds that someone just kind of loses himself and lays an egg one week is so high because that's what's happened all season long.
Yes.
That's just what's happened in the NFL this season. So the Steelers, if they're just able to do their own thing, take care of their own business, like they've been doing the past 3 weeks, that's like all you could ask for. And I feel like that's the best way to give yourself the best shot at winning this season in the NFL. It's not doing anything spectacular. It's not being a world beater. It's just doing the little things and not losing games that you're not supposed to. And this game against Baltimore, as we keep going back to, because they're not going to play everyone, because there's going to be a bunch of backups on the field, this is just a take care of business game.
Yep, that's exactly what this is. And look at Mike Tomlin. Everybody says the Arizona Cardinals, the New England, they'll bring up a billion games. The Steelers should have won those games. There's a difference between like middle of the season, Mike Tomlin loses big games that he shouldn't lose, and week 18, Mike Tomlin big games that he shouldn't lose. Because week 18 is a whole other animal. And that's like, when you are in a corner, that is when Mike Tomlin coaches his best. And he always has to get them to a corner. Like, he's always the guy that's like, all right, let's back ourselves into a wall a little bit. But once you're there, man, there's nobody who does it better than Mike Tomlin. I agree. I think that's where we are with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know. It's going to be an exciting weekend of football. And for everybody who says it, and I said this before we got on the show, everybody's complaining about, the Steelers, they're going to have to wait until Sunday Night Football. I can't believe it. I don't know, man. If I'm a fan, like if I'm a Steelers fan and I'm sitting around and they get a win on Saturday, that is the most intense and exciting weekend of football you could ask for. Like, anybody who's a real football fan is sitting around. They don't have plans this weekend. They have told their entire family that they are not moving from the couch. They have their pizza spot already ready to be ordered from. The beer is in the fridge. There's this is the best weekend of football that you could possibly ask for, especially with everything on the line. And the Steelers get to send it off. Right. You get a win at the beginning of Saturday, and you have the next 24 hours or so to just sit there and pray to whoever you pray for that the Steelers are going to make the playoffs. It doesn't get any better than that.
Right. It's like, oh no, I gotta, watch a bunch of compelling football for the rest of my weekend after getting. Yeah, like what are we doing? Like, who's complaining about that? Yeah.
No. I saw a lot of people. And I was like, no way, man. This is as good as it gets. You could not. Whoever wrote the script this year absolutely killed it, because this is as good as it gets for the Pittsburgh Steelers and really for the NFL as a whole. That being said, it's Monday. I mean, we kind of just talked about it, but let's dive into it a little bit more. The Steelers are 9-7. Mike Tomlin extends his non-losing streak to 17 seasons in a row. Mason Rudolph and this offense are alive and well. Where do you stand with the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into Week 18 against the Baltimore Ravens?
Well, we've fluctuated. This has been a roller coaster of a question all season, and I think
yes,
we're hitting another peak in this roller coaster. Like, I think you have every reason to be confident in this team right now. Just the way that they've overcome injuries on defense. We've talked enough about the offense. Like, you're only going to get healthier as these last few kind of weeks wrap up. And I think Steelers fans should have every reason to be really optimistic in this team moving forward and going into the playoffs, especially because, it's the same thing we've talked about for all season. This AFC is wide open. Talked about it, that I have confidence that they'll get into the playoffs, and I think once you get there, anything can happen, and truly anything can happen, not just in a it's the playoffs, anything can happen, but because there's no team in there, there are very few teams in there. I mean, even the top seed in the AFC is a team that the Steelers have beaten already. Like, at the very worst, they're going to have split the season series with the Baltimore Ravens. It's a team that you can beat. Like, there is no one in that field that they're incapable of beating on any given day. So I feel like the Steelers have new life. They have, new confidence, and I feel like their fans should have confidence in them by extension. Everyone should be, I don't know. If I was a fan, I wouldn't approach this with a kind of sense of dread at all. I feel like I'd be really confident. I would enjoy this. I would relish this opportunity to, kind of ride the wave and ride the hot hand and feel like you have momentum more than like anyone else in the league, quite frankly. Like,
yes,
I saw someone, I think it was Tom Pelissaro from NFL Network, tweeted out that Steelers and Ravens, two hottest offenses in the NFL. Like, who would have thought that? Like, if I told you at the beginning of the season, if I told you in Week 8 or something that we would be going into the final game of the regular season with the Steelers being one of the teams in this, like, one of the teams riding into the end of the season on the best hot streak of anyone else in the NFL. Like, I don't think you would believe me. But so that's why I think you should just kind of enjoy this moment and enjoy this high that they're on, and watch them try to take care of business, and then just let the chips fall where they may after that.
So I agree. And I saw the tweet and I laughed. I wanted to put the meme of Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? No, not me. It is the biggest rule in the NFL. It should be the biggest belief in the NFL that the favorite once you enter the postseason to win a Super Bowl is the hottest team at the end of the year. And right now that's the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, you can't say it's not the Baltimore Ravens. And even if they lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers this week, it's the Baltimore Ravens. Like, it's not, Tyler Huntley losing to Mason that's not a reason to count out where Baltimore is. The second hottest team in the NFL right now is probably a toss-up, or at least in the AFC, is probably a toss-up between the Buffalo Bills and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And unfortunately for the Pittsburgh Steelers, they need the Buffalo Bills to lose. But if they could get in there, they're probably the second, maybe third hottest team in football right now. That's a lot better than where they've been the past couple of times they've made the playoffs. And everybody wants to talk about Mike Tomlin's, hasn't won a playoff game in this long, and TJ Watt's never won a playoff game, and all these things. I agree. I don't think the Steelers have ever been this hot heading into the postseason or nearing the postseason the last 4 or 5 times that they have gotten in. And that's where they are right now. And that's as good as it gets for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You kind of wish that they did this a week earlier. You kind of wish that they benched Mitch Trubisky after his first poor performance and put Mason Rudolph in there, and then had themselves locked into a playoff berth right now and just feeling real good about where they are. But everything happens for a reason. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't always make the right decisions. Who knows what comes out of this? But if you ask me what happened for a reason, well, we get 2 days of phenomenal football. And again, the scriptwriters absolutely nailed it with it. So I think that they did their job phenomenally. That's where I sit with the Pittsburgh Steelers, is they are a hot team and they got to get in, and it's not guaranteed that they're going to get in. But if they could get in and they look as good as they've looked the last 2 weeks, you are in the perfect position heading into the postseason. You kind of wish you got a playoff game, but that wasn't going to happen either way because Baltimore is Baltimore and you weren't winning the AFC North. So your 1B, your second place option would be to be the team with the hottest hand heading into the postseason. I think that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. I feel real good about them. And just like you said, like, it's time to relish in this. If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, enjoy the week, enjoy the scenario, enjoy all the talk, enjoy the hype, and just head into the weekend and go, this is going to be the best 2 days of football. This is the best way you could possibly start 2024 if you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, because you get to watch great football for 2 days. And maybe your Sunday night's ruined, but maybe by that point, everything else works out in your favor and you get to enjoy a nice Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins game to end your Sunday while the Steelers are already in the postseason. Who knows? It is a great place to be. The roller coaster ride, just like you said, has peaked. And it feels real good to be peaking at the end of the season instead of being like, oh man, what do they do now? How bad is this team going to be? If the season ended today, the conversations would be, can you get Mason Rudolph back here cheap enough that he's your quarterback next season? What do you do with Kenny Pickett? Do you have any faith in him? And how good can this team be if Mason Rudolph or whoever is as good as this offense was at the end of the season? That's a good place to be, considering how low the lows were throughout the year and all the craziness that has happened with this Pittsburgh Steelers team. With that said, we're heading out of here and entering an absolutely wild week for this team and the NFL. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, or check us out anywhere you get your podcast. As always, check all of our work out at allsteelers.com and our pit coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. Enjoy a happy new year to you and your family, and we'll see you next time. Peace.